Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel back in time, not just to a place, but into a feeling. We're heading to ancient Greece, a world of brilliant philosophers, epic heroes, and gleaming marble temples. But we're not going there to debate Socrates or fight in the Trojan War. No, tonight, you're going there with a very specific and very dangerous attributes you are breathtakingly beautiful. And, as you'll soon discover, in a world where the gods are as jealous as they are powerful, being too pretty could get you into a world of trouble. You might think it's a superpower, but you'd probably not survive your first week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support truly means the world. Then while you're at it, drop me a comment and let me know what city you're listening from, and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing that hits you isn't a sound, but a light. It's a kind of brilliant, almost liquid gold sunlight that seems to wash over everything, making the air itself feel warm and heavy. You take a step, and your simple leather sandal presses into fine, pale dust. You're here, ancient Athens. The air smells of baked earth, roasting lamb, briny olives, and something else, a faint, floral scent of thyme carried on the breeze from the nearby hills. You're standing near the edge of the agora, the sprawling, chaotic heart of the city. It's a whirlwind of activity. Men in draped tunics, or chitons, are gathered in small groups, their voices rising and falling in passionate debate. Merchants shout from behind tables piled high with figs, pottery, and shimmering fish. Thy donkey, laden with amphora of wine, stubbornly blocks a narrow path, its owner pleading with it in exasperated tones. In the distance, high on its rocky perch, the Parthenon presides over the whole scene, a testament to order and divine majesty that feels a world away from the vibrant mess below. And then you notice it, the silence. It's not a complete silence. Of course, the din of the market continues, but a small pocket of quiet seems to travel with you as you move. A merchant, halfway through yelling about the freshness of his pomegranates, stops mid-syllable, his eyes fixed on you. A group of philosophers, their brows furrowed in concentration, lose their train of thought, their expressions going slack with a kind of dumbfounded awe. You feel it like a physical touch, 100 pairs of eyes, all turning in your direction. At first, a warmth spreads through your chest. It's flattering. You know you are beautiful. You've been told so your whole life, but this is different. The attention here is more intense, more analytical. You pull your simple linen himadion, a sort of outer cloak, a little tighter around your shoulders, a gesture of modesty that only seems to draw more attention to the grace of your movement. You see, beauty here isn't just a pleasant quality, it's a statement, it's a force. In a culture that strived for the ideal form in their art, a living embodiment of that ideal is both a marvel and a disruption. The statues in their temples, which we now see as pristine white, were originally painted in vibrant, almost garish colors. They were meant to be seen, to be loud, to grab your attention. And right now, you are the most vibrant statue in the entire agora. You continue walking, trying to appear purposeful, as if you have somewhere to be. You pass a fountain where women are gathering water, and their chatter, too, dies down. Their gazes are different from the men's. There's admiration, yes, but it's laced with something else. A flicker of envy, a touch of suspicion, a hint of something you can't quite name. But it feels like fear. Not for you, but almost on your behalf. As if you're carrying something fragile and extremely valuable through a crowd of thieves. A young man, bolder than the rest, takes a step toward you, a half-formed compliment on his lips, but an older man beside him subtly puts a hand on his arm, shaking his head with a grave expression. The message is clear. Don't engage. they'll draw attention to it. Don't speak of it too loudly. This is the first lesson you learn. Your beauty isn't yours. It belongs to the public gaze, to the whispers that follow you, to the silent assessments being made from every corner. Just how much of Athenian public space was truly accessible to women is a matter historians still debate. Was a respectable woman even allowed to wander the agora so freely the lines were blurry and often depended on class and circumstance? That for you, the rules feel irrelevant. The open space of the market, which should feel like freedom, has become a stage, and you are the sole performer, whether you want to be or not. The sun is warm on your skin, but the spotlight is beginning to feel cold, heavy, and terribly, terribly isolating. You hurry away from the fountain, the sudden silence of the women more unnerving than the shouts of the men. You keep your eyes fixed on the dusty ground ahead, a futile attempt to become invisible, but it's no use. As you move through the throng, the pocket of silence that surrounded you begins to collapse, replaced by a low, persistent hum. It's the sound of whispers. You can't make out whole sentences, just fragments that float towards you on the warm air. You hear the word callous duty repeated like a refrain, then another, Theoi, which means godlike in form. It's meant as the highest of compliments, but the way it's spoken, in hushed, almost fearful tones, makes it sound like an accusation, like you're carrying stolen property. You see a group of young men, their athletic builds honed in the gymnasium, nudge each other. They don't catcall or make crass remarks. Their admiration is more reverent, and somehow, that's even more unsettling. They look at you the way they look at the statue of Apollo in the temple, with a mixture of a healthy dose of fear. You are a masterpiece, and masterpieces are meant to be admired from a distance. Getting too close can be dangerous. Ducking your head, you try to lose yourself in a narrower alleyway, hoping to escape the relentless scrutiny. Here, the stalls are smaller, selling more specific wares, pungent herbs, small clay odors for the gods, and protective charms. An old woman sits on a low stool, her face a road map of wrinkles, her hands busy weaving a garland of dried lavender. She watches you approach, but her eyes, unlike the others, hold Noah. They hold something that looks unnerving like pity. She beckons you with a single, crooked finger. Hesitantly, you stop before her stall. She doesn't speak. Instead, she reaches into a small wooden bowl and pulls out a tiny, crude carving of an eye, painted on a dark blue bead. She presses it into your palm, her leathery fingers closing your hand around it. For the B.A.S. Canio, she murmurs, her voice raspy like dry leaves. The envy. It follows a face like yours. You look down at the charm. It feels cool against your suddenly clammy skin. You understand now. The stares, the whispers, the strange reverence. It's not just admiration. It's a collective, unspoken anxiety. In this world, intense envy isn't just an emotion, it's a force. A tangible, malevolent energy that can curdle milk, sicken livestock, and bring misfortune to a person. It's the evil eye, and a face like yours is a magnet for it. Every admiring glance, every whispered compliment, is a potential curse. This is the second, more terrifying lesson. People aren't just looking at you, they're projecting their feelings onto you, and their envy has power. You offer the woman a small coin, but she waves it away, her gaze fixed on something over your shoulder. It's not the eyes of mortals you should fear most, child, she whispers, before turning back to her lavender. Her words send a chill down your spine despite the heat. The eyes of mortals are bad enough. Whose eyes could be worse? As you walk away, clutching the small bead, the pieces begin to fall into place. The fear you sense in people is a reflection of their own deep-seated piety. To be too much of anything too rich, too proud, too successful is to risk committing hubris, an act of arrogance that offends the gods. And what could be more arrogant than possessing a beauty that rivals that of Aphrodite herself? People are afraid to praise you too loudly, as if the gods are listening in. their divine ears perking up at the sound of a mortal receiving the kind of adoration reserved for them. It's a strange and frustrating paradox. The Greeks celebrated and pursued the ideal of beauty in their art and philosophy, yet they were deeply suspicious of it in human form. Historical texts, mostly written by men of the upper classes, paint a picture of a society where respectable women were ideally kept in seclusion. In a part of the house called the Gyneceum, how strictly this was enforced is a topic historians still argue about. Was it an ironclad rule, or an ideal that a merchant's wife or a farmer's daughter simply cowed and to follow your very presence here? A woman of such noticeable grace, walking through the agora, is already a transgression in the eyes of some. You are breaking a social rule, and on top of that, a cosmic one. You finally find a quieter street, shaded by an overhanging balcony adorned with potted geraniums. The noise of the agora fades to a distant murmur. You lean against a cool stone wall, taking your first real breath since you arrived, but the feeling of being watched hasn't left you. It has simply changed its nature. It's no longer coming from the people in the market. It feels higher up, more distant, more powerful. The old woman's warning echoes in your mind. It's no longer the eyes of mortals you feel on you. You look up, past the terracotta rooftops, towards the brilliant, empty blue sky, and you can't shake the feeling that someone up there is looking down. Leaning against that cool stone wall, you start to connect the dots. The old woman's warning, the fearful reverence of the crowd, it all points upward, to the beings who inhabit Mount Olympus. You're beginning to understand the fundamental, unwritten rule of this world. Exceptional mortals are like bright flames in a dark room, and the gods, like giant, cosmic moths, are irresistibly drawn to them. But unlike moths, their attention doesn't end with a gentle flutter. It ends with a burning. You close your eyes and try to think. What do you really know about these gods? Not the grand, stoic figures you've seen in statues, but the characters from the stories whispered by nurses and recited by poets. They are a family, and like most powerful families, they are deeply dysfunctional. They are prone to pettiness, breathtaking jealousy, and violent rage. They love as fiercely as they hate, and their favor is as dangerous as their wrath. You remember a story your tutor once told you about Arachne, the master weaver. She was a mortal woman, not of noble birth, just incredibly skilled. Her tapestries were so lifelike that the nymphs of the forest would come to admire them. But Arachne made a fatal mistake. She became proud. She boasted that her skill was even greater than that of Athena, the goddess of wisdom and craft. It was the ultimate act of hubris. Athena, never one to ignore a challenge, came down to earth disguised as an old woman and warned Arachne to be more humble. Arachne, full of youthful arrogance, scoffed at the advice and challenged the goddess to a weaving contest. What happened next is a masterclass in divine spite. Athena wove a tapestry depicting the majesty of the gods and the terrible fates of mortals who dared to defy them. It was a warning. Arachne, in a breathtaking act of defiance, wove a tapestry that depicted the gods' own scandals and misdeeds, their infidelities, their deceptions, their abuses of power. It was a perfect piece of art, and it was the truth. For that, she was punished. Athena, enraged not just by the challenge but by the accuracy of the critique, destroyed Arachne's work and transformed her into a spider, doomed to weave forever in darkness. Her beautiful art reduced to a sticky, disposable trap. The lesson wasn't about weaving. It was about knowing your place. Arachne's talent wasn't the problem, her failure to be humble about it was. And as you stand there in the Athenian sun, you realize your beauty is your tapestry. It's your masterpiece, and simply by existing, you are displaying it. You are, in a sense, challenging the gods without even trying. Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty and love, how would she feel about a mortal whose face turns more heads than her own statues? What about Hera, the queen of the gods, a being defined by her ferocious jealousy? Would she see your beauty as a potential temptation for her notoriously unfaithful husband? Zeus himself, the king of the gods, whose history is a long list of infatuation nests with beautiful mortals, often with disastrous consequences for the women involved. You're a walking, breathing liability. This sphere wasn't just the stuff of myth, it permeated everyday life. There's a term, Theoi, which translates to the envy of the gods. This was a genuine and widespread anxiety. If your crops were plentiful, you'd make a small, conspicuous sacrifice to Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, to show you weren't getting arrogant. If you won a great victory, you'd publicly credit the gods for their favor. It was a constant, delicate dance of acknowledgement and humility, designed to keep you from getting too big for your britches and attracting the wrong kind of divine notice. But how do you downplay a face you can't offer a portion of your beauty as a sacrifice? You can't publicly declare that Aphrodite is much prettier. The very act of doing so would draw attention to the comparison. This is where the mythology becomes a user's manual for survival. The stories aren't just entertainment, they are cautionary tales. A set of cultural operating instructions. They scream the same message over and over: do not stand out. Do not challenge the established order. Stay in your mortal lane. Historians still debate how literally the average Greek person took these stories. Did they believe a woman was literally turned into a spider? Or did they see it as an allegory for the social death that comes with arrogance? The line between literal belief and metaphorical truth was likely very blurry, much as it is in many religions today. Though whether literal or allegorical, the effect was the same: enforced a social hierarchy where gods were on top, and mortals, especially female mortals, were expected to remain humbly at the bottom. You open your eyes and look around the quiet street. For the first time, you feel truly afraid. Your beauty is not a gift, it's a cosmic imbalance. It's a flaw in the universal order of things. You have something that, by all rights, should belong to the goddesses, and you have a sinking feeling that they're going to want it back, or, at the very least, they're going to make you pay for borrowing it. To truly understand the depth of this divine jealousy, you need to go beyond abstract fears and into the visceral, personal stories that every child in this world grew up hearing. Your mind drifts, pulling you into the stream of myth, into a time before the whispers in the agora, to a story that perfectly illustrates how beauty becomes a magnet for divine cruelty. Let's talk about Medusa. Forget the monster for a moment. Forget the snakes for hair, the petrifying gaze. Before all that, Medusa was a young woman, and her defining feature was her astonishing beauty. She wasn't a goddess, nor was she a nymph. She was one of three sisters, the Gorgons, but unlike her immortal siblings, Destino and Diu are Yale. Medusa was mortal, and she was exquisite. The stories don't just say she was pretty. They linger on the details. They speak of a face so perfectly formed it could make you forget your own name. But her true glory, the feature praised by poets and envied by other women, was her hair. It was magnificent. Imagine cascades of silky, shining locks, so rich and full that they seemed to capture the sunlight itself. When she walked, it flowed behind her like a river of spun gold, or perhaps deep, polished bronze. The exact shade is lost to time, but the effect was always the same: mesmerizing. But Medusa wasn't just beautiful, she was devout. She served as a priestess in the temple of Athena, the virgin goddess of wisdom, warfare, and craft. This was a position of immense honor. It required a life of chastity and dedication. To serve Athena was to commit your life to the principles of reason, strategy, and self-control, and for a time, Medusa was the perfect servant. She was pious, humble, and her presence in the temple was, in itself, a tribute to the goddess. Worshippers would come to Athena's temple and be struck by the beauty of her priestess, seeing it as a reflection of the goddess's own greatness. Here you are, a visitor in this minspake, watching a younger, happier Medusa. You see her sweeping the cool marble floors of the sanctuary, her famous hair tied back simply to keep it from getting in the way. You see her lighting the sacred lamps, her movements filled with a quiet, graceful reverence. There is no vanity in her. She is aware of her beauty. Of course, how could she not be? With the way people react to her, but she carries it with an easy grace. She sees it not as her own possession, but as a gift that she, in turn, offers in service to her patron goddess. But here lies the terrible, unspoken danger. Her beauty starts to create a problem. Men who come to the temple to pray to Athena find their thoughts stray. They speak more of the priestess's hair than of the goddess's wisdom. Their admiration begins to border on worship. They aren't trying to be blasphemous, but they can't help it. Her beauty is a distraction, a disruption to the sacred order of the temple. It's a song so loud it drowns out the hymns. Now, you have to understand the character of the gods. Poseidon, the god of the sea, earthquakes, and horses, was the eternal rival of Athena. Their most famous feud was over the patronage of Athens itself, a contest Athena won, much to Poseidon's eternal bitterness. He was everything Athena was not: tempestuous, driven by impulse and lust, a force of chaos against her order. And one day, Poseidon enters Athena's temple. He sees Medusa, and he wants her. The details of what happens next are often softened or debated, but the most common ancient sources are clear. It was not a seduction. It was not a consensual affair. Struck by her beauty, Poseidon assaults Medusa, right there on the floor of the sacred temple. He violates her in the one place she should have been safest, committing an unforgivable act of sacrilege against his rival, Athena. The act itself is a brutal display of power, a way for one god to defile the sacred space of another. And Medusa is the instrument. Her beauty, the very thing that made her remarkable, is what made her a target. It was the lure that brought the monster into the sanctuary. There's a small, fascinating, and lesser-known detail that some scholars point to in certain very old versions of the myth. Medusa is one of the original earth goddess figures from a pre-Hellenic religion. In this interpretation, her story isn't about a mortal girl but about the violent overthrow of an older, female-centric faith by the new, male-dominated Olympian pantheon. Was she a priestess, or a goddess in her own right who was demoted to monster status by her conquerors? It's one of those questions where history and myth blur, a debate that continues in quiet academic circles. But for the version of the story that the average Athenian would know, the narrative is simpler and more terrifying. Medusa, a devout priestess, lies on the cold marble floor, her beautiful hair splayed around her, her world shattered. The crime has been committed. The sanctity of the temple has been broken. And now, someone must be punished. You brace yourself, because you know who the hammer is going to fall on. And it's not the one who wielded it. The echoes of the violation fade, leaving a heavy, chilling silence in the grand temple. The sacred fires in the braziers seem to flicker lower, as if recoiling from the profane act that has just occurred. Medusa is alone, crumpled on the marble, a victim of a god's lust and others' rivalry. And then, a change in the air, a sudden drop in temperature. A divine presence descends, but it's not one of comfort or justice. It is the cold, razor-sharp fury of Athena. The goddess appears not as a gentle patron, but as a terrifying warrior, clad in her golden armor, her helmet obscuring her face, the aegis her fearsome shield, already adorned with the head of a gorgon from a past victor regleaming on her arm. She takes in the scene her defiled temple, the shattered sanctity, and her priestess. You, watching from the shadows of this mythical memory, feel a surge of hope. Surely, Athena, the goddess of wisdom and justice, will understand. Surely, her wrath will be directed at her uncle, Poseidon, the perpetrator. She is a female deity, a virgin goddess who fiercely protects her domain. She, of all beings, must see the injustice of what has transpired. But you are thinking with modern sensibilities. You are not thinking like an Olympian god. Athena's gaze falls upon Medusa, and there is no sympathy there. There is only rage, but her rage follows a twisted, cruel logic. In her eyes, Poseidon's crime is an insult to her. He has trespassed. He has defiled her property. The mortal woman at the center of it is almost secondary. The true crime, from Athena's perspective, is the disrespect shown to a goddess. So who is punishable? Poseidon is a powerful god, one of the big three alongside Zeus and Hades. To attack him directly would be to start a war on Olympus. A messy, chaotic affair. It's much easier, much cleaner, to punish the mortal, to erase the stain by destroying the object that was stained. Athena's reasoning, as it is often interpreted, is a chilling example of victim blaming. She sees Medusa not as a victim, but as a lure. It was Medusa's beauty that drew Poseidon in. It was her magnificent hair that tempted a god to forget his place. Therefore, Medusa is complicit in the temple's defilement. She brought this upon herself, simply by being beautiful. Her existence became an attractive nuisance, a legal term from our world that fits perfectly here. She was a hazard waiting to happen. You have allowed my sacred space to be defiled, the goddess declares, her voice echoing with metallic coldness. The accusation hangs in the air, impossibly unfair. Medusa, still in shock, can only look up, her eyes pleading for a mercy that will not come. This is the moment that solidifies the fear you've been sensing all day. When a mortal is caught between two feuding gods, the mortal always loses. You are a pawn on their chessboard, and your feelings, your life, your innocence, they are all irrelevant to the outcome of their game. There's a curious side note in some retellings of the myth. The Roman poet Ovid, who wrote one of the most famous versions of the story, presents it very clearly as a tale of unjust punishment. He lays the blame squarely on the gods and frames Medusa as a tragic figure. But earlier Greek sources are often more ambiguous. They don't editorialize as much. They simply state what happened. Poseidon acted. Athena got angry. Medusa was punished. To the ancient Greek listener, this might not have seemed as outrageously unjust as it does to us. It might have simply seemed logical, an inevitable consequence, a cosmic cleaning of house. The debate among scholars about Athena's motivation continues. Was it pure, vindictive jealousy of Medusa's beauty? Was it a calculated political move to avoid conflict with Poseidon? Or was it a reflection of a patriarchal society's inherent tendency to hold women responsible for the actions of men? The answer is probably a messy combination of all three. What's undeniable is that the story serves as a terrifying warning to mortal women. Your beauty can be interpreted as a crime, and you can be punished for the sins committed against you. Athena raises a hand. The air crackles with divine energy. Medusa shrinks back, but there is nowhere to run. She is trapped in the house of her goddess, the one she served so faithfully. You realize the true horror of her situation. It's not just that she is being punished, it's that she is being punished by the very figure who should have been her protector. It is the ultimate betrayal. The security she thought she had in her piety, in her chastity, in the sanctity of the temple walls was an illusion. And now, that illusion is about to be violently torn away. The punishment begins, and it is a masterpiece of poetic, psychological cruelty. Athena does not simply strike Medusa down. That would be too quick, too merciful. The goddess understands that true punishment isn't about ending a life, it's about twisting it into a permanent mockery of what it once was. The punishment must fit the perceived crime. And the crime, in Athena's eyes, was Medusa's beauty. So Athena attacks the source. She focuses on Medusa's most celebrated feature, her glorious, shining hair. With a divine word, a flash of cold light, the transformation happens. You watch in horror as those silken tresses, the envy of mortals and the temptation of gods, begin to writhe and thicken. The beautiful strands twist together, their texture changing from soft hair to coarse, scaly skin. They hiss, one by one, the locks of hair morph into venomous snakes, a seething, writhing nest of serpents bound to her scalp. Where there was once beauty that invited touch, there is now a horror that promises a painful death. But the goddess is not finished. A face as beautiful as Medusa's could still inspire devotion, even with a crown of snakes, so that too must be destroyed. Athena's curse seeps deeper, twisting Medusa's features into a grotesque parody of their former perfection. Her skin takes on a sickly, greenish pallor. Her mouth, once gentle, widens into a permanent, horrifying grimace, her teeth sharpening into tusks like those of a wild boar. And then comes the final, most terrible part of the curse. Her eyes, her beautiful eyes, which had once reflected the candlelight of the temple with such piety, are now invested with a deadly power. Athena decrees that anyone who looks directly upon Medusa's face will be instantly turned to stone. This is the genius of Athena's vengeance. She doesn't just make Medusa ugly, she makes her beauty's opposite. She transforms Medusa from an object of desire and admiration into a weapon of involuntary destruction. Medusa, who once lived in a community, surrounded by people, is now condemned to absolute, soul-crushing isolation. She cannot look upon a friend, a family member, or even a stranger without killing them. Her very presence is a death sentence. The world she knew is now a gallery of potential statues. She has become a monster, and the world will only ever remember her as one. Her backstory, her innocence, her devotion, all of it is erased, overwritten by the horror of her new form. This transformation is a powerful cultural lesson. It tells you that beauty is fleeting and can be taken from you in an instant. But more than that, it warns that the gods can redefine your very identity. They can turn your greatest asset into your most monstrous liability. You think back to the Agora, the whispers of Theoi, godlike. That was the compliment. Now you see the terror hidden within it. To be godlike is to be a pretender, and the gods will always reassert their authority. They will knock you back down to your mortal place, and they will do it in a way that ensures you never forget the lesson. There's a curious little detail often overlooked in the Medusa myth. Her sisters, Astheno and Euryale, who were immortal, were also transformed into gorgons alongside her. Why they committed no crime? They weren't even there. The myths are vague on this point. Some say they simply stood by their sister in solidarity and were cursed for it. Others imply it was just part of the package deal, a divine fury so complete that it splashed on to those nearby. This detail, which many historians are still puzzled by, highlights the chaotic and oft illogical nature of divine justice. When a god gets angry, innocent bystanders are not safe. Medusa is driven from her home, from the world of humans, to a remote, desolate island at the edge of the world. There she lives in bitter solitude, her only company the growing collection of stone figures, heroes and adventurers who came seeking to slay the monster, only to become permanent monuments to her curse. Her story is no longer her own. It belongs to the man who will come to kill her. She is now just a quest item, a monster to be defeated for a hero to gain glory. As the vision of Medusa's transformation fades, you are left with its chilling residue. You instinctively raise a hand to your own face, to your own hair. You now understand the full weight of the old woman's pity in the market. She saw you and didn't just see a pretty girl. She saw a target. She saw a potential Medusa, a Psyche, a Cassandra, all women whose beauty brought them nothing but pain. The stories are not just stories. They are warnings, and you are walking around wearing the biggest warning sign of all. The memory of Medusa's fate lingers like a phantom chill, a stark reminder of divine retribution. But the gods' jealousy isn't always sparked by a direct insult or a perceived rivalry. Sometimes, the crime is far more passive, far more innocent. Sometimes, all you have to do is exist. To illustrate this, your mind drifts to another story, one that feels less like a horror film and more like a twisted fairy tale, the story of Psyche. Imagine a king and queen with 3 daughters. The 2 elder princesses are lovely, celebrated for their grace and charm. But the youngest, Psyche, is something else entirely. Her beauty is of a different magnitude. It's not just that she's pretty, she's so exquisitely, flawlessly beautiful that language fails to describe it. People look at her and they don't just feel admiration, they feel a sense of profound, religious awe. You find yourself in her city, watching the phenomenon unfold. When Psyche walks through the streets, people stop what they're doing. They throw flowers in her path. They whisper prayers as she passes. They start neglecting their usual religious duties. Why travel to the temples of Aphrodite on the distant islands of Paphos or Cythera when divine beauty, in its purest form, is walking right here among them? They begin to worship her. They build altars to her. They offer her sacrifices. They start calling her the new Aphrodite. And this, right here, is the critical mistake. It's a mistake that Psyche herself never encourages. She is, by all accounts, a kind and modest person. She is uncomfortable with worship. She weeps over the fact that people are turning away from the true goddess. But it doesn't matter. The public has made its choice. From her golden throne on Mount Olympus, Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, takes notice, and she is furious. This isn't like the Medusa story. There's no rival god using Psyche as a pawn. There's no act of hubris on Psyche's part. Her crime is simply being. Her face has become an unintentional act of blasphemy. The adoration she receives is, in Aphrodite's eyes, cosmic theft. Every prayer offered to Psyche is one stolen from her. Every flower laid at Psyche's feet is a flower plucked from her own divine garden. You can almost sympathize with the goddess, just for a second. Imagine being the undisputed master of a certain craft formal Enya. And then suddenly, this young upstart appears and people start claiming she's better than you. It's a tale as old as time, played out on a cosmic scale. Aphrodite's pride is wounded, her divine authority challenged, and the goddess scorned is a dangerous thing indeed. So Aphrodite decides to solve the problem with a touch of cruel irony. She calls upon her son, Eros. You might know him as Cupid, the mischievous god of desire, famous for his golden arrows that could make anyone fall in love. Her plan is simple and vindictive. She commands Eros to fly down to earth and shoot Psyche with one of his arrows, but to make her fall in love with the most vile, wretched, and monstrous creature he can find. The punishment is designed to humiliate her. Her divine beauty will be yoked to something hideous, a living mockery of her perceived perfection. This story highlights a different flavor of divine danger. It's not about being punished for your actions, but for the reactions of others. Psyche can't control how people see her. She can't stop them from worshipping her. Yet, she is the one who will bear the consequences. It's a classic shoot the messenger scenario, but in this case, her face is the message. There's a strange detail in Psyche's story that gets lost in most retellings: her loneliness. Because she is worshipped as a goddess, no mortal man dares to ask for her hand in marriage. Her two less beautiful sisters are married off to kings, but Psyche remains alone, admired by all but loved by none. Her beauty has isolated her, placing her on a pedestal so high that no one can reach her. It's a gilded cage, a theme you're starting to see as common for exceptionally beautiful women in this world. Scholars have long debated the origins of the Psyche myth. Unlike Medusa, who appears in very early Greek texts, the full story of Cupid and Psyche is most famously told by a Roman writer named Apuleius in his book The Golden Ass. Is it a genuine ancient Greek myth that he recorded, or is it more of a later, philosophical allegory about the soul Psyche in Greek and its journey to find divine love? Eros? The academic world is split. Some believe it's a true folktale, while others see it as a sophisticated literary invention. Regardless of its origin, the message it sent was clear. Your beauty can make you an idol, but idols are objects, not people. They are worshipped, but they are not loved. and they can be shattered at any moment by the very gods they are seen to emulate. As Eros prepares his bow, ready to carry out his mother's petty revenge, you see the trap closing around Psyche. She is about to learn that being loved by the wrong person is dangerous, but being an object of worship is fatal. The stage is set for Psyche's humiliation. Aphrodite, simmering with a uniquely divine form of professional jealousy, has dispatched her son Eros to do her dirty work. You can almost picture the scene on Olympus, Aphrodite pacing her gilded halls, ranting about the audacity of this mortal girl, while Eros, a being who embodies desire itself, sharpens an arrow and listens with a placid, perhaps slightly bored, expression. You travel with Eros as he descends from the heavens, an invisible arrow of fate no-ked in his golden bow. He finds Psyche sleeping in her chamber, a picture of serene, unknowing innocence. The moonlight streams through the window, illuminating a face so perfect it seems to have been carved by the gods themselves, which is, of course, the entire problem. Eros, the god who has ignited passion in countless hearts, approaches the bed, ready to inflict his mother's cruel curse. And then, he sees her, really sees her. He leans closer, perhaps to get a better look, or maybe he stumbles slightly in the dark. In that moment, one of his own enchanted arrows pricks his skin. The effect is instantaneous. The god of desire is suddenly, helplessly, and irrevocably smitten with the very woman he was sent to punish. He is caught in his own trap. This is a twist worthy of a soap opera, and it reveals something fundamental about the gods. For all their power, they are not immune to the forces they command. Eros, who has played with the hearts of gods and mortals like they were toys, now finds his own heart compromised. He can't possibly follow through with his mother's plan. He can't condemn this perfect creature to a life with a monster. In fact, he now desires her for himself. But he knows his mother. Aphrodite's rage will be terrifying if she discovers his betrayal. So, he improvises a new plan, one born of desperate, divine love. He flies away, leaving Psyche untouched, and goes to the oracle of Apollo at Delphi. He secretly influences the prophecy given to Psyche's desperate father, who has come seeking answers about why his beautiful daughter cannot find a husband. The prophecy is chilling. The oracle declares that Psyche is not destined for a mortal husband. Her bridegroom is a terrible, monstrous serpent who flies through the air, vexing gods and men alike. She is to be dressed in funeral clothes, taken to the peak of a mountain, and left there to be claimed by her monstrous fate. It's a horrifying prospect, but it's a prophecy from Apollo. It is not to be questioned. The entire city mourns. In a moment of tragic courage, accepts her fate. She has been a source of anxiety, an unintended blasphemy for her family for too long. Perhaps this terrible destiny is what she deserves. So, a grim procession leads her up the mountain. She is abandoned on a desolate, windswept crag, a sacrifice to a monster she has never met. As her family departs, leaving her to her fate, she weeps, not just from fear, but from the profound loneliness that has defined her life. This is Aphrodite's jealousy at work, even when her original plan has gone awry. The goddess's scorn has effectively condemned Psyche to death in the eyes of the world. She has been excommunicated from mortal society. The beauty that made her an object of worship has now made her an object of sacrifice. There's a fascinating cultural insight here. Why a monster? Why was this the go-to punishment? The idea of a beautiful woman being paired with a monstrous creature is a recurring motif in folklore. Some anthropologists argue it's a way of exploring the dual nature of female sexuality in a patriarchal world. The beautiful, civilizing influence versus the wild, untamable force. But in the context of this story, it's pure, calculated spite. Aphrodite wanted to defile Psyche's beauty by linking it to ugliness, and Eros, to protect her, has to lean into that narrative, creating a fiction that is just as terrifying as the original plan. The line between a god's love and a god's cruelty is terrifyingly thin. Eros loves Psyche, but to save her, he must first terrify her and isolate her completely. He puts her through a horrifying ordeal, all under the guise of protecting her from his mother. It's a toxic dynamic, one where protection looks a lot like persecution. You're learning that divine affection is just as dangerous as divine wrath. One might curse you, the other might lock you away in a gilded cage on a mountaintop. In either case, your freedom is the first casualty. As Psyche stands alone on the cliff, the wind whipping her funeral veil around her, she braces for the arrival of the serpent. But what comes for her is not a monster. It is Eros, the gentle west wind, sent by Eros to rescue her. The wind lifts her softly from the rock and carries her down into a hidden, enchanted valley, to a palace more beautiful than any she has ever seen. Her ordeal, she thinks, is over, but it has only just begun. The west wind sets Psyche down as gently as a falling leaf in the gardens of a spectacular palace. It seems to have been sculpted from gold and ivory, shimmering under a soft, magical light. Fountains murmur sweet melodies, and invisible servants attend to her every need, their voices whispering on the air, guiding her to a feast laid out just for her, to a bath filled with scented water. This is the home of her mysterious, monstrous husband. That night, under the cloak of absolute darkness, her husband comes to her. She cannot see his face. He forbids it. He is kind, gentle, and his voice is filled with love. He is nothing like the monster the oracle described. Psyche is confused, but also relieved, and, over time, she falls deeply in love with this invisible, nocturnal husband. Her life becomes a strange rhythm of lonely, luxurious days and blissful, sightless nights. But this perfect, hidden existence cannot last. Her two older sisters, hearing that Psyche has not been devoured, but is living in splendor, become consumed by their own, very human, brand of jealousy. They visit her, and under the guise of sisterly concern, they plant seeds of poison in her mind. How do you know he has not the monster they hiss? He hides his face for a reason. Surely, he is a hideous serpent, fattening you up to devour you later. You must see him. You must know the truth. Take a lamp and a knife. When he is asleep, look upon his face. If he is a monster, you must kill him to save yourself. The sisters' envy is a pale, mortal echo of Aphrodite's divine jealousy, but it is just as destructive. Torn between her love for her husband and the terrifying doubt her sisters have sown, finally gives in. One night, after her husband has fallen asleep, she lights a small oil lamp and, with a sharp knife in her trembling hand, she approaches the bed. She raises the lamp. The soft light spills across the pillows, and she sees him for the first time. It is not a monster. It is the god Eros himself, more beautiful than any mortal, his golden wings folded in sleep. Psyche is stunned, overwhelmed with relief and shame. She leans in for a closer look, her heart pounding with adoration, but her hand trembles, and a drop of hot oil from the lamp falls onto the god's shoulder. He awakens with a start, not just from the pain, but from the betrayal. He sees the lamp, the knife, his wife standing over him. He sees her out. In an instant, he is gone. The palace, the gardens, the invisible servants, they all vanish. Psyche finds herself alone again, not on a windswept crag, but in a desolate field, with nothing but the memory of what she has lost. Now, she must face the full, unmitigated wrath of Aphrodite. The goddess, who now knows of her son's betrayal, is doubly furious. She finds Psyche and decides to teach her a lesson in what it truly means to cross a goddess. She will not kill Psyche. Instead, she will break her spirit. She devises a series of four impossible trials. First, Psyche must sort a massive, chaotic pile of mixed grains, wheat, barley, poppy seeds, lentils into separate heaps by morning. It's an impossible task, but a colony of ants, taking pity on her, comes to her aid and completes the task for her. Second, she must gather a hank of golden wool from a flock of violent, man-eating sheep that graze by a river. A whispering reed tells her not to approach them directly, but to wait until dusk when they brush against the briar bushes, and then gather the wool left clinging to the thorns. Third, she must fill a crystal flask with the black water from the river Styx, which cascades down a cliff guarded by dragons. This time, an eagle, the bird of Zeus, helps her, swooping down to snatch the water for her. The purpose of these trials is not just to torment Psyche. They are a form of cosmic hazing. Each task is designed to be impossible for a mortal to achieve alone. Her success comes only from the pity and intervention of the natural world. Historians and mythologists have long debated the symbolic meaning of these tasks. Are they an allegory for the soul's purification? Do they represent different virtues? One must acquire. The true meaning is elusive. That the immediate message is clear: a mortal is nothing without help. Finally, Aphrodite, enraged that Psyche has succeeded so far, gives her the last, most dangerous trial. She must descend into the underworld itself, confront Persephone, the queen of the dead, and bring back a casket containing a dose of her divine beauty. This is a suicide mission, but Psyche, guided by a mysterious voice from a tower, learns the secrets to navigating the land of the dead. She succeeds. She gets the casket, but on her way back to the world of the living, her human curiosity gets the better of her once more, believing a touch of divine beauty will help her win back Eros. She opens the box, but it doesn't contain beauty. It contains a Stygian sleep, the death-like coma. Aphrodite, in her infinite spite, has booby-trapped the final trial. Psyche collapses, lifeless, on the road. It is only then that Eros, healed from his burn and his pride, flies to her, awakens her, then finally confronts his mother, appealing to Zeus himself to legitimize their love. Zeus agrees, makes Psyche immortal, and they are properly married. The story has a happy ending, but it's an ending bought with incredible suffering. Psyche learned her lesson: being pretty doesn't get you a fairy tale. It gets you a series of life-threatening, soul-crushing trials designed by a petty, jealous goddess. Her story becomes another brick in the wall of cultural anxiety surrounding beauty. Leaving the realm of myth for a moment, you return to the dusty, sun-baked reality of the Athenian street. The stories of Medusa and Psyche feel like grand, epic tragedies, but the fears they represent have a very real, very immediate counterpart in everyday life. It's the concept the old woman at the market warned you about: Kenia, the evil eye. This wasn't a fringe superstition. It was a core belief, as ingrained in the culture as the worship of Zeus. The evil eye was the belief that a look could carry a force, and that envy, in particular, could be projected from one person to another like an invisible dart, causing real, physical harm. It was the folk magic explanation for all the random misfortunes of life: a sudden fever, a goat that stops giving milk, a ship's mast that cracks for no reason. It wasn't just bad luck, you had been overlooked. And who is the most likely target for the evil eye? The beautiful, the successful, the happy. Anyone whose good fortune stood out was a potential lightning rod for the envy of others. And you, with your godlike beauty, are walking around with the biggest lightning rod of all. You start to see the world around you differently now. Every interaction is filtered through this new understanding. You pass by two women gossiping near a well. They fall silent as you approach, their eyes scanning you from head to toe. Before, you might have interpreted their look as simple curiosity or admiration. Now, you see the potential for Kenia. Is there a flicker of envy in their eyes? Is their silence not one of awe, but of them consciously suppressing a compliment, lest they accidentally curse you with their praise? It creates a strange, isolating paranoia. You can't trust compliments. A person might say, "Your hair is as beautiful as a goddess says," and mean it sincerely, but the very intensity of their admiration could be the vehicle for the curse. The praise itself becomes the danger. This is why people developed counterspells. The most common response to a compliment was to immediately say something to deflect it, to demonstrate humility and ward off the divine jealousy that envy could attract. If someone praised your child, you might say, "May the gods protect him," or even spit lightly on the ground and act, thought to dispel the evil influence. You feel an overwhelming urge to make yourself smaller, less noticeable. You pull your hem addy on further over your head, trying to shadow your face. You hunch your shoulders slightly, disrupting the natural grace of your posture. You are actively trying to be less beautiful, a concept that feels absurd and deeply sad. Safety lies in mediocrity. You see a man across the street, a wealthy merchant by the look of his fine, dyed tunic. He is laughing with his friends, his voice booming, but you notice, dangling from his wrist, is a small, carved phallus. It's not meant to be obscene. It's an apiotrope, icy charm, a symbol meant to ward off evil. The logic, which seems bizarre to a modern mind, was that a shocking or comical image would attract the first glance of the evil eye, and its power would be neutralized by the charm's own potent, protective magic. This belief was everywhere. The Greeks carved these symbols, along with eyes and other protective signs, onto their buildings, their drinking cups, the prows of their ships. It was a constant, low-level magical warfare being waged against the intangible force of human envy. The philosopher Pluto wrote extensively about the evil eye, treating it not as a magical fancy but as a scientific phenomenon. He theorized that the eyes were the primary organ of the soul, and that a soul filled with envy could emit rays of this negative energy, which could poison the air around a person and cause them harm. How exactly this worked was, he admitted, a matter of debate, but that it did work was taken as a given. This wasn't just a belief of the uneducated masses, it was a concept that even the greatest thinkers of the age grappled with. So when people look at you, they are not just seeing a person. They are seeing a potential nexus of dangerous energy. Your beauty attracts admiration, which quickly coalesces into envy. That envy, the bas cameo, attracts misfortune, and if it gets loud enough, the phthon thean, the envy of the gods. You are a one-woman chain reaction of cosmic bad vibes. This explains the strange pity you saw in the old woman's eyes. She knew this. She knew that to be as beautiful as you are is to be constantly under attack from unseen forces. It is to live in a state of perpetual vulnerability, not to physical violence, but to the much more insidious violence of thought and feeling. The sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the city. The golden light softens into a warm, rosy pink. It should be a beautiful, peaceful time of day, but for you, the growing shadows feel like a manifestation of the dark. Envious thoughts you've been imagining all day. You clutch the small, blue-eye bead the woman gave you in your palm. It feels flimsy, inadequate against such a pervasive threat. You now understand that in this world, beauty doesn't just need to be protected from unwanted touch or unkind words. It needs to be protected from the act of being seen at all. The reality of the bas cameo sinks in, and suddenly, the world feels like a more dangerous place. It's not a world of grand monsters, but of quiet, insidious threats lurking behind a neighbor's smile or a stranger's compliment. Clutching the small eye bead in your hand, you start to actively look for other signs of this invisible war, and once you start looking, you see them everywhere. You wander into a more residential part of the city, where the streets are narrow and wind between simple, two-story houses. The air smells of cooking fires and baking bread. It feels safer here, more domestic. But the threat is here, too, nailed above the doorway of a modest home. You see a small, terracotta plaque. It's not a family name or a decoration. It's a gorgonana sculpted head of a gorgon, likely Medusa, with her tongue out. tusks beard, and snakes for hair. It's the very image of the monster you just envisioned. But here, it's not a symbol of terror. It's a shield. The logic is a kind of reverse psychology. The horrifying face of the Gorgon was thought to be so shocking, so powerfully ugly, that it would frighten away any evil spirit or curse, including the evil eye. It's like fighting fire with a bigger, more monstrous fire. The ultimate victim of beauty as danger has been turned into its most potent guardian. You continue walking unnoticed the little things. A woman watering her plants has a small, tinkling wind chime hanging from her balcony. It's not just for making pleasant sounds. The noise was also believed confusing to repel malevolent spirits. The sound creates a shield of good vibrations. You pass a blacksmith's workshop. The clang of hammer on anvil ringing through the street. Hanging near the entrance is a string of old, rusty iron nails. Iron, especially iron that had been through a forge, was believed to have powerful protective properties. It was a metal of industry and civilization, and its presence was thought to be anathema to the chaotic, unseen forces of evil. These weren't just household decorations, they were part of a complex system of folk magic that existed alongside the state religion. While the city collectively worshipped Athena and Poseidon in grand temples, individuals practiced their own small, domestic rituals to manage the anxieties of daily life. There's a whole category of artifacts that archaeologists find called apiotrope, icy objects, from the Greek word apotropa, ios, meaning to turn away. You find yourself drawn to a small stall you missed earlier, tucked away in an alley. It's run by a quiet man who sells nothing but charms. Here, you see the full arsenal laid out. There are more eye beads en moitié, of course, in all sizes. There are small, carved hands making a specific gesture, the main is FICO, or fig hand, a symbol that, like the phallus, was meant to be a comically shocking distraction for the evil eye. It's a gesture that's still considered vulgar in many parts of the world today, but here, it was a tool for spiritual self-defense. You also see small pouches of herbs. The man explains that carrying dried rue or garlic was thought to repel the Baescania. The pungent smell was believed to be offensive to evil spirits, creating a sort of olfactory shield around the carrier. It's a bit hard to feel divinely beautiful when you smell faintly of garlic, which was, perhaps, part of the point. Anything to dim the shine a little. One of the most curious undebated practices was spitting. Ancient writers like the Caracates and Pliny mention that spitting often 3 times was a common way to ward off evil, especially after giving or receiving a compliment. The exact reasoning is a topic of scholarly debate. Did they believe saliva contained some part of the life force? And by spitting you were projecting a protective barrier, or was it a gesture of mild self-abasement, a way of saying, I am not worthy of this praise, to appease any listening spirits or gods, whatever the logic? It was a widespread habit. You imagine the absurdity of it. Someone stops you on the street, your beauty is a gift from the gods, and to protect yourself from their well-meaning but dangerous admiration, you would have to break eye contact, mutter a prayer, and discreetly spit on the ground. It's a social dance built on a foundation of deep-seated magical anxiety. All these terms, these rituals, these strange gestures, they paint a picture of a world where people felt constantly vulnerable. They were trying to exert some small measure of control over a world filled with random misfortune and the perceived threat of divine and human envy. As you stand at the charm seller's stall, the reality of your situation becomes clearer. Your beauty is a beacon, and while others can buy a gorgon head for their door or carry a smelly herb in their pocket, you can't. Your protection has to be more subtle, more constant. It has to be in the way you carry yourself, the way you avert your gaze, the way you learn to deflect compliments with practiced humility. You are expected to be your own APO, trope icy charm, constantly working to turn away the attention your very existence attracts. It sounds exhausting, and you've only been here for a day. The sun has finally dipped below the horizon, and the sky is a deep, velvety indigo. The city quiets down. The hustle of the agora replaced by the soft glow of oil lamps in windows and the distant sound of a lyre being played. You find yourself invited into the home of a moderately wealthy family, perhaps the family of a potter or a shipwright. The evening meal, the diapinon, is about to begin. You hope that within the private space of a home, you might finally be able to relax. You couldn't be more wrong. The home is built around a central, open-air courtyard. You are led to the undrawn, the men's quarter, where the symposium, or drinking party, will be held after dinner. Respectable women of the household would typically not be present for this, but as a guest of unique status, an exception has been made. You are an object of curiosity, a rare bird they all want to glimpse. You recline on a dining couch, as is the custom. The host, a genial man with a warm smile, raises his cup to you. To our guest, he says, his voice full of genuine admiration, his beauty honors our humble home. Truly, the gods have blessed you. A chorus of agreement triples through the room. That you, now fluent in the language of this culture's anxieties, feel a familiar prickle of fear. This is not a simple toast. It's a test. It's a public declaration of your exequationess, and the entire room is now watching to see how you handle it. You can't just say thank you. That would be arrogant, an affirmation of your superiority. It would be like accepting the compliment and, by extension, the envy and potential divine retribution that comes with it. You can't ignore it. Either that would be rude. You have to perform a very specific social ritual, the art of humble deflection. You lower your gaze, a picture of modesty. You are too kind, sir. You reply, your voice soft. It is your family's hospitality that is the true blessing here. I am merely a grateful recipient of your grace. You have successfully turned the compliment back on him, praising his virtue instead of accepting praise for your appearance. A palpable sense of relief seems to settle over the room. You've passed the test. You understand the rules. You are not a walking act of hubris. You are a safe beauty, one who knows her place. This is the constant weight you must carry. Every compliment is a loaded gun, and you have to gracefully disarm it before it goes off. It's a relentless performance of self-deprecation. You must treat your own beauty like a powerful, slightly embarrassing secret that everyone already knows. You have to pretend it's not the most interesting thing about you, even when it's the only thing anyone seems to want to talk about. As the meal progresses, a servant, the young girl, spills a drop of wine on your tunic. She freezes, her eyes wide with terror, expecting a harsh rebuke. You smile gently, assuring her it's nothing, and dab at the stain with a cloth. This small act of kindness sends another wave of murmurs through the room. They are not just commenting on your beauty anymore, they are commenting on your character. Such grace, such humility. The irony is crushing. The only way to survive having a beautiful face is to develop a personality so relentlessly humble in self, effacing that it neutralizes the threat. Your character becomes a shield for your face. There's a specific Greek concept that's relevant here, sophrosyne. It's a complex word, often translated as moderation, temperance, or self-control. For men, it meant knowing your limits and acting with discipline. For women, sophrosyne was almost entirely tied to modesty and chastity. A woman with sophrosyne was quiet, stayed within the home, and did not draw attention to herself. For an exceptionally beautiful woman, practicing sophrosyne was a full-time job. It meant actively working against the very nature of her appearance, which was to draw attention. The degree to which women were expected to perform this humility is, of course, debated by classists. Our sources are almost exclusively written by elite men who projected their own ideals onto women. A fishmonger's wife in the Piraeus harbor probably had little time for such delicate performances of modesty. But in this setting, in a respectable home, the pressure is immense. Later, as the men begin their symposium, you see another side of how beauty is handled. A flute girl, a Hetaira, is brought in to provide entertainment. She is beautiful, skilled, and witty, but her beauty is different from yours. It's professional. It's for sale. She is not bound by the same rules of modesty. She can be bold. She can engage in banter. Because she exists outside the rigid structure of respectable society. In a strange way, she has more freedom than you do. Her beauty is a tool of her trade, something she can wield. Yours is a liability you must constantly manage. The host, a little drunk on wine, looks from the flute girl to you, and then back again. He sighs. Beauty, he says to the man next to him, is both a divine gift and a terrible burden. He says it with the air of a philosopher stating a profound truth. For him, it's an abstract idea. For you, it is the exhausting, lived reality of every single moment. The symposium grows louder, the men's philosophical discussions, lubricated by watered-down wine. The flute girl's music weaves through their laughter, but your thoughts drift away again, back to the grand stage of mythology, to another woman whose beauty attracted the worst kind of divine attention. This time, it wasn't about jealousy, but about desire, and a gift that became the most horrific of curses. You think of Cassandra. You find yourself standing on the windswept battlements of Troy, a city of mythic grandeur. The walls are impossibly high, built, as legend says, by the gods themselves. Below, the vast plain stretches out to the sea, dotted with the 1,000 campfires of the Achaean army. The siege has been going on for years. The air is thick with tension and the smell of salt and smoke. And here she is, Princess Cassandra, daughter of King Priam. She is not just beautiful, she possesses a kind of frantic, ethereal grace. Her eyes, wide and dark, seem to look at you and through you at the same time, seeing things that are not there. She is famed throughout the land for her looks, a beauty so striking it caught the eye of a god. Not just any god, but Apollo, the god of music, poetry, reason, and, most importantly, prophecy. Apollo, the golden archer, the epitome of divine beauty and order, saw Cassandra and was consumed by desire. He wanted her, but unlike his brutish uncle Poseidon, Apollo preferred seduction to force. He offered her a deal, a divine bribe. He would grant her the gift of prophecy, the ability to see the future in all its clarity, if she would agree to be his consort. Cassandra, a mortal princess, was faced with an offer from one of the most powerful and revered gods on Olympus. It was an incredible temptation, the power to know what was to come, to guide her people, to save her city. She accepted the gift. Apollo, true to his word, bestowed the power upon her. The process is described in some texts as him literally breathing the gift into her mouth. The cosmic wires were connected. She could now see the tapestry of fate. She saw the great wooden horse. She saw the sack of her beloved city, the flames licking at the towers, the slaughter of her family. She saw her own death. The future rushed into her mind, a torrent of unavoidable horror. And then, having received the gift, she made a fateful choice. She refused the god. She turned her back on Apollo, breaking her end of the bargain. You can imagine Apollo's reaction. It's the fury of a spurned suitor combined with the righteous indignation of a slighted god. He had been tricked, played for a fool by a mortal girl. He could not take the gift of prophecy back. Divine gifts, once given, are apparently non-refundable, but he could amend it. He could add a single, devastating condition. He leaned in on. As the myths tell it, he spat in her mouth, or in some versions, simply cursed her with a word. The curse was this: you will always see the future with perfect, agonizing clarity, that no one will ever believe you. This is a punishment of exquisite psychological torment. far more cruel than being turned into a monster. Medusa was condemned to physical isolation. Cassandra was condemned to a mental and emotional one. She is surrounded by the people she loves, her family and her countrymen, but she is utterly alone in her knowledge. You watch her as she runs through the palace halls, her beautiful hair flying behind her, her eyes wild with the visions she can't unsee. She grabs her brother, the great hero Hector, by the arm. Don't go out to fight today, she pleads. I see Achilles dragging your body behind his chariot. Hector looks at her with a mixture of pity and annoyance. He sees his beautiful sister raving again. He pats her head, tells her to go and pray, and marches out to his death, exactly as she foretold. She screams at the Trojan elders not to bring the wooden horse inside the city walls. It is full of soldiers. It will be our doom. They smile sadly. Poor, mad Cassandra. Her beauty, they whisper, must have driven her insane. They see her as a tragic figure, a beautiful but broken oracle. Her prophecies are dismissed as the hysterical ravings of a disturbed young woman. Her beauty becomes part of her curse. It makes her seem more fragile, more hysterical. If she were a grizzled old man, perhaps they would heed his dire warnings. But she is a young, beautiful princess, and so her frantic pronouncements are easier to dismiss as feminine emotion run amok. Her very attractiveness works against her credibility. The exact nature of Cassandra's gift and curse is a point of contention for scholars. Was it a literal curse from a literal god, or is the myth an allegory for the figure of the ignored truth-teller? The wise person whose insights are dismissed by a society that doesn't want to hear them. Some modern interpretations even view her story through a feminist lens, seeing it as a metaphor for how women's valid warnings and insights are often dismissed as hysteria in patriarchal structures. Whatever its interpretation, the story is a powerful testament to the dangers of divine attention. Apollo's love was a trap. The gift he offered was bait. When she refused to be his possession, he ensured that her power would bring her nothing but agony. She is forced to be a helpless spectator to the destruction she can see so clearly. Her ruse unheard, her warnings mocked. She is the loneliest person in a dying city, a prophet whose beautiful voice is doomed to be nothing more than noise. The ghost of Cassandra's unheard screams follows you as your focus shifts from the divine to the deadly serious world of mortal politics. The gods are dangerous, yes, but you're about to learn that in the high-stakes Game of Thrones, played by ancient kings and warlords, a beautiful woman was often seen as the most valuable and the most volatile piece on the board, and there is no better example of this than the woman whose face, as the poet Christopher Marlowe would later write, launched 1,000 ships. Helen of Troy. Let's clear up a common misconception first. Helen wasn't just a pretty queen. In the world of the Greek myths, she was a demigod. Her mother was the mortal queen Leda, but her father was Zeus, king of the gods, who visited Leda in the form of a swan. This divine parentage was the mythological explanation for her supernatural, world-altering beauty. She wasn't just the prettiest woman in Sparta, she was, by a significant margin, the most beautiful woman in the world. You are now in the court of Sparta, not the grim, militaristic Sparta of the later classical period, but an earlier, mythical Sparta of bronze-clad kings. You see Helen. Her beauty is different from Medusa's or Psyche's. It's not just her face or her hair, it's an aura. The charisma so powerful, it seems to bend the will of men around her. When she enters the room, political arguments stop. Hard-bitten warriors forget their grievances. Her presence is a political event in itself. Her mortal father, King Tyndareus, faced a unique and terrifying political problem. His daughter was growing up, and it was time for her to be married. But her beauty was so legendary that the most powerful kings, princes, and heroes from all across the Greek world descended upon his palace, each demanding her hand in marriage. This wasn't a romance novel. It was a geopolitical crisis. Tyndareus was in an impossible position. He had dozens of suitors in his court, each one a powerful, proud, and heavily armed ruler. If he chose one, the other 99 would be insulted. Their pride would be wounded. It was a recipe for a massive, bloody war, with his own kingdom at the epicenter. To reject a hero like the cunning Odysseus or the mighty Ajax was to make a powerful enemy. To accept one was to make enemies of all the rest. Helen's beauty had turned his court into a political powder keg. You can see the stress etched on the king's face as he looks at his lovely daughter. He loves her, but he also sees her as a walking, breathing diplomatic incident. She is a political liability of the highest order. Her face could be the ruin of his kingdom. This is where one of the cleverest heroes of the age, Odysseus of Ithaca, comes into play. Seeing the king's predicament, he offers a solution. In exchange for Indorice's help in securing his own preferred bride Penelope, Helen's less dazzling but clever cousin, Odysseus will tell him how to solve the suitor problem. The solution was a stroke of genius. It came to be known as the Oath of Tyndareus. Before Helen made her choice, Odysseus proposed that all the suitors swear a solemn, unbreakable oath. They had to swear to two things first: that they would all accept and defend the man Helen chose as her husband. Second, and most importantly, if anyone ever abducted or threatened Helen in the future, they would all band together and wage war on the aggressor to bring her back. It was a mutual defense pact, a proto-NATO, with Helen's marriage as its central clause. The suitors, each hoping he would be the one chosen, and perhaps seeing the wisdom in avoiding a war amongst themselves, all agreed. They sacrificed a horse and swore the oath. One by one, the immediate crisis was averted. Helen was then allowed to choose her own husband, and she chose Menelaus, the wealthy and powerful prince of Mycenae, who would become king of Sparta. For a time, it worked. The political chess piece was safely on its square. But the oath was a loaded gun hanging on the wall of Greek politics. Everyone knew it was there. And years later, when the Trojan prince Paris, aided by the goddess Aphrodite, would come to Sparta and abscond with Helen, that oath would be invoked. The nature of Helen's departure with Paris is one of the great, enduring debates of classical literature. Did she go willingly, swept away by love for the handsome prince, or was she abducted against her while the ancient sources themselves are divided? Homer's Iliad is ambiguous, sometimes portraying her as a willing participant tracked with guilt, other times as a victim of fate and the gods. The poets Apho celebrated her as a romantic hero who chose love over duty. The tragedian Euripides, on the other hand, often portrayed her as a more complex, and sometimes more blameless, figure. Historians and literary critics have been arguing about it for over 2.5 millennia. But in a way, it doesn't matter whether she was a lover or a hostage. Her beauty made her the ultimate political prize. Her face was the justification, the casus belli, for a decade-long war that would end with the complete destruction of a great city and the deaths of countless heroes on both sides. She was the beautiful excuse everyone needed to finally have the great war they had all been gearing up for. The Oath of Tyndareus, meant to prevent a war, ended up guaranteeing an even bigger one. Her beauty didn't just cause a little trouble, it reshaped the map of the heroic age. The story of Helen and the Oath reveals a crucial truth in this world. A beautiful woman is a political asset, but also a constant, simmering threat. She is a chess piece, moved around the board by fathers, husbands, and kings. Her own desires are secondary to her strategic value. Now, let's zoom in from the grand scale of the Trojan War to the more intimate, personal politics of the household in the city-state. You are no longer in a mythical king's court, but back in the tangible world of 5th century Athens. You are the daughter of a prominent, wealthy citizen. Your father is a respected figure in the assembly, with political ambitions, and you, with your exceptional beauty, have become a central part of his strategy. A good marriage can forge a powerful alliance. It can link your family to another, combining wealth, influence, and political power. And a daughter with your looks is the ultimate bargaining chip. You are not just a person, you are a living dowry, an advertisement for the quality of your family's lineage. Your beauty suggests good breeding, divine favor, and the promise of beautiful, healthy heirs. You sit in the Guinea Sea, the women's quarters at the back of the house, listening to the muffled sounds of men's voices from the underrug. Your father is entertaining guests, potential political allies, potential rivals, and you know, with a sinking feeling, that you are the main topic of conversation. A match is being discussed. The suitor is a man twice your age, a powerful aristocrat with a vast estate. More importantly, a network of political allies that your father desperately needs. You have seen him. He is a coarse, unpleasant man, but your feelings on the matter are irrelevant. This is not about your happiness. It is about a merger. Your mother comes to sit with you. She is a kind woman, but she is also a product of this system. She tries to comfort you, but her words only confirm your status as an object. He will be a powerful protector for our family. She says, your beauty has brought us a great opportunity. She doesn't see the terror in your eyes. She sees a successful transaction. This was the reality for many aristocratic women. Their lives were mapped out for them from birth. Their value was intrinsically tied to their beauty and their fertility. A beautiful daughter could elevate a family's status, but she could also bring ruin. What if your beauty attracted the wrong kind of attention? What if a man more powerful than your father, or even a political rival, decided he wanted you? Your existence could inadvertently spark a feud that could destroy your family's reputation, wealth, and even their lives. You are a walking temptation. And the men around you are not gods, but they are just as prone to pride, jealousy, and violence. This is why, in many upper-class families, beautiful daughters were kept in greater seclusion. It wasn't just about protecting their chastity, it was about managing a valuable and volatile asset. The more beautiful the daughter, the more securely she was kept in the gilded cage of the Guinea Sea. Her public appearances were carefully managed, restricted to religious festivals and other sanctioned events where she could be seen but not approached. There's a fascinating, if somewhat grim, piece of historical trivia related to this. In some Greek city-states, the laws concerning adultery were brutally clear. If a man caught another man in the act with his wife, he was legally entitled to kill the adulterer on the spot. However, the law made a distinction. If the wife had been seduced, meaning she was a willing participant, she could be divorced and publicly shamed. But if she had been forced, the blame fell solely on the aggressor. The constant question for a husband with a beautiful wife was which was it the societal assumption, as we'll see, often leaned towards blaming the woman's allure. The extent to which women were actually secluded is a major point of debate among historians. Our textual sources, written by men like Xenophon and Lysias, present this ideal of the sheltered, invisible woman, but archaeological evidence like the sheer number of shops and public fountains in Athens suggests that women, especially those of lower classes, must have had a significant presence in public life. They had to shop, fetch water, work. The idea of total seclusion was likely an elite ideal, not a universal reality. But for you, in this wealthy household, the ideal is a reality. You are a treasure to be guarded. You look around the Guinea Sea. The room is comfortable, adorned with fine weavings perhaps made by you and the other women of the house. But the windows are small and high up. The door leads only to the domestic courtyard, not to the street. It is a sanctuary, but it is also a prison. And as you sit there, listening to the men decide your future, you realize the tragic parallel to Helen. She was a princess, a demigod, whose beauty sparked a great war. You are a citizen's daughter, whose beauty is a key move in a small-scale political game. The scale is different, but the principle is the same. Your face is not your own. It is a piece of property, a political tool, a source of profound and constant danger to yourself and those you love. The shadow of the Trojan War looms large. The grand, epic warning that the danger your beauty poses isn't always about attracting foreign princes or pirate fleets. Sometimes, the most immediate threat is much closer to home. It's sitting across from you at your own dinner table. It is the quiet, gnawing suspicion of your own husband. You are married now. The political negotiations are over. The dowry has been paid, and you are the mistress of your own household, or oikos. This should be a position of security and respect, and in many ways, it is. But your exceptional beauty introduces a unique and persistent poison into the relationship doubt. In this patriarchal society, a husband's honor is inextricably linked to his wife's fidelity. A wife's adultery brought shame not just upon herself, but upon her entire family, and especially upon her husband. It suggested he was unable to control his own household, a sign of weakness in the eyes of his peers. And in the mind of the average Athenian man, an exceptionally beautiful wife was a walking, talking temptation. The assumption was not that she was more virtuous, but that she was more likely to be tempted, and more likely to tempt others. Her beauty was seen as an active agent, a force that could erode her own willpower and that of the men around her. You experience this not as an open accusation, but as a subtle, suffocating atmosphere of scrutiny. Your husband, the man who may even love you deeply, watches you. He watches how you speak to the male servants. He watches how you greet his friends when they visit. A smile that is too warm, a glance that lingers a second too long, it's all logged, analyzed, and filed away as potential evidence. You are telling him about your day, about a trip to the market to buy wool. You mention in passing that the merchant, the young man, gave you a good price. A flicker of something crosses your husband's face. It's not quite anger. It's a cold, calculating look. Why did the merchant give you a good price? Was he charmed by your beauty? Did you encourage him? A simple, innocent transaction is suddenly cast in a sinister light. You learn to censor yourself. You edit your stories. You downplay any interaction with men. Your life outside the home becomes a minefield of potential misunderstandings. It is exhausting. You are living under a constant, low-level interrogation, and you are always the primary suspect in a crime that hasn't even been committed. This societal suspicion is deeply embedded in the literature of the time. In his O Economicus, the writer's Xenophon has a character, Ischomachus. Describe how he trained his young, naive wife. He explains that a woman's chief duty is to remain indoors and supervise the household, while the man's duty is to work outside. He compares her to a queen bee in a hive, who manages the internal affairs but never leaves. The justification is practical, but the underlying message is one of control. The home is a woman's proper sphere, and by keeping her there, a husband can better guard her chastity and his honor. This brings us to one of the most famous and debated spaces in a Greek house, the Gyneceum, or women's quarters. For decades, the common understanding, based on textual sources, was that this was a secluded, almost harem-like part of the house where women were kept locked away from the eyes of any men who weren't their husbands or close relatives. It was seen as a physical manifestation of this patriarchal control. However, modern archaeology has seriously challenged this simplistic view. This is a great academic controversy. Many excavated houses from the classical period don't have a clear, distinct women's quarter that can be easily identified. Rooms seemed to be more multifunctional. This has led many historians to believe that the strict seclusion of the Gyneceum was, once again, an upper-class ideal that was rarely practiced, or that it was more of a social concept than a fixed architectural one. The women's space might have been wherever the women of the house happened to be working at a given time, and social custom, rather than a locked door, kept unrelated men away. But whether the Gyneceum was a literal, locked room, or a more fluid social space, the principle it represented was real. It was about separation. It was about controlling a woman's interactions to prevent any hint of scandal. And for you, a woman of great beauty. The invisible walls of that Guinea sea feel thicker, the social rules more rigidly enforced. Your husband's suspicion is not necessarily born of malice. It's born of fear. He is afraid of public shame. He is afraid of the other men who he knows desire you. His jealousy is a twisted form of protection, a cage built to keep you safe, but a cage nonetheless. You look at your reflection in a polished bronze mirror. The face that stares back at you is the source of all your privilege and all your problems. It secured you a wealthy husband and a comfortable home, but it also bought you a lifetime of suspicion. In this world, a beautiful woman is assumed to be a flight risk. She is perpetually on trial, and her beauty is the primary evidence against her. And in the court of her husband's mind, she is often guilty until proven innocent. Day after day after day, the trial of your virtue never truly ends, it just changes venues. As you navigate this complex world, you become acutely aware of the stories they tell about women like you. These aren't just myths about goddesses and princesses, they are archetypes. Character molds that society uses to make sense of things it cannot control. You have been cast, against your will, in the role of the giant Gunny, a womanly woman, whose power lies in her beauty and charm, a power that is inherently suspect. Let's explore how this archetype is constructed. Society needs a villain, a scapegoat, to explain away the disruptive force of male desire and the chaos it can create. It is far more comfortable to blame a woman's irresistible beauty than to confront the failures of male self-control. And so, the myth of the femme fatale, the dangerously alluring woman, is born and nurtured. You see it play out in the philosophical discussions of the men in your circle. They speak of two kinds of love, two kinds of Aphrodite. There is Aphrodite Urania, heavenly Aphrodite, who inspires a pure, intellectual love of beauty and truth. And then there is Aphrodite Pandemos, Aphrodite for all the people, the goddess of raw, physical desire and procreation. They elevate the former as a noble pursuit, while viewing the latter as a necessary but dangerous force that must be managed and contained within the confines of marriage. Your beauty, because it is physical and immediate, is automatically associated with Aphrodite Pandemos. You are a walking, talking reminder of the lower form of love that these high-minded men profess to disdain, even as they are drawn to it. You represent the body, not the mind, the chaos of nature, not the order of civilization. This a way of intellectually framing you. By categorizing your power as something primal and non-rational, they can justify controlling it with the higher principles of law, reason, and social order, all of which are, conveniently, their domain. Consider the story of the first woman, Pandora. Again, Hesiod, the poet who tells her tale, calls her a Kalankaon, a beautiful evil. He describes her creation in detail. The gods give her the gifts of beauty, grace, and charm, but they also give her a bitch's mind and a deceptive character. She is a trap, a beautiful package designed to bring ruin to man. This isn't just one story, it's a foundational myth for the entire culture's understanding of gender. It establishes the archetype of woman as a beautiful but treacherous creature, whose allure is a weapon used against men. So when your husband looks at you with suspicion, he is not just seeing you, his wife. He is seeing millennia of cultural programming. He is seeing Pandora, and Helen, and Circe. He is seeing an archetype, a potential for betrayal that is built into your very nature. He is a victim of the same stories that you are. The extent to which this literary misogyny reflected real-life attitudes is one of the most contentious debates in classical studies. Some scholars argue that these texts, written by a small, educated male elite, represent an narrow, pessimistic view, and that the daily reality for most people was far more varied and nuanced. They point to evidence like loving epitaphs on tombstones and the powerful roles of priestess in some cults as proof that not all women were seen as beautiful evils. Others argue that these foundational myths and philosophical ideas had a powerful, pervasive influence on the culture at all levels. The truth, as is often the case, is probably somewhere in the messy middle. But the existence of the archetype is undeniable, and its effect on you is profound. You feel like you are constantly fighting a ghost, wrestling with a reputation that precedes you. You know you are not deceitful. You know your heart is not treacherous. But how can you prove it when the master narrative of your entire culture insists that beauty like yours is a mask for danger? You realize that this archetype is the ultimate tool of social control. By creating and perpetuating the myth of the dangerous woman, the patriarchal society gives itself the perfect justification for limiting women's freedom. If women are inherently deceptive and their beauty is a weapon, then they must be supervised. They must be kept within the home. Their choices must be made for them by their more rational male guardians, fathers, husbands, brothers. The femme fatale is not a person, she is a political invention. She is the ghost that haunts every beautiful woman, the excuse that is used to lock her in a gilded cage. And as you sit in the quiet of your Guinea sea, you understand that the real monster isn't some divine being or a pirate on the high seas. The real monster is the story they tell about you. The journey has been long, and the lessons heavy. You felt the weight of divine jealousy, the sting of mortal envy, the crushing pressure of politics, and the suffocating embrace of suspicion. Now, as the years begin to pass in this timeless space of story, you arrive at a strange and bittersweet realization for a woman like you. The one thing that might finally bring you peace is the one thing most people fear: the fading of your looks. You are older now. You sit in the courtyard of your home, the same one where you once felt like a prisoner under your husband's watchful eye. He is older too, his suspicion softened by decades of your proven fidelity. The sun warms your face, and you notice the fine lines around your eyes when you smile. Your hair, once the color of polished bronze, is now streaked with silver. The sharp, breathtaking edge of your beauty has softened into a different kind of grace, one of character and experience. And something remarkable has happened. The world has started to look back at you differently. When you walk through the Agora now, you are no longer a spectacle. The whispers don't follow you. The pockets of silence don't form. People meet your gaze not with awe or envy, but with simple, respectful acknowledgement. You are no longer a walking masterpiece, a disruptive force. You are a respected matron, the mistress of a household, a person. You have finally become visible as something other than your face, and it is liberating. The young man, full of the foolish confidence of youth, jostles past you without a second glance. Years ago, that would have been unthinkable. He would have stopped, stammered an apology, his eyes wide. Now, you are just part of the crowd, and the anonymity feels like a cool drink of water after a lifetime of thirst. The constant, low-level hum of anxiety that has been the soundtrack to your life has faded. You no longer worry that a compliment might carry a curse, because the compliments are fewer and of a different kind. People now praise your wisdom, or the success of your children, or the quality of the textiles your household produces. They are praising you for what you do, not for what you are. The fear of divine attention has also receded. Aphrodite is no longer concerned with you. Her jealous gaze has moved on to a younger generation of beauties. You are no longer a threat to her cosmic vanity. You have been demoted from her rival to just another one of her many subjects, and the demotion feels like a promotion to a life of peace. This presents a strange and poignant paradox, one that was very real for women in the ancient world. Youth and beauty brought a certain kind of power, the power to attract a wealthy husband, to be the center of attention, but it was a dangerous, volatile power that came with immense risk and restriction. Old age, on the other hand, brought a decline in that specific kind of value, but it offered a different, more stable kind of status, especially for a woman who had successfully managed her household and produced legitimate heirs. As the respected matriarch of a family, a curia. You would have wielded considerable influence within the domestic sphere. You would manage the family's resources, direct the servants, and arrange the marriages of your own children. You would become a repository of the family's history and traditions. Your voice would finally carry the weight of authority, not the dangerous allure of beauty. The exact status of elderly women in ancient Greece is a subject historians continue to explore. Were they revered as wise elders or dismissed as unproductive members of the oikos? The evidence is mixed and likely varied by class and family. Texts sometimes portray old women as meddling busboides or drunkards, but funerary inscriptions often speak of them with great love and respect. It seems that, like today, it depended heavily on the individual and her family. But for you, in this story, age has brought a kind of freedom you never knew in your youth. The gilded cage of the Guinea Sea has dissolved. You are now rusted. You are no longer seen as a flight risk. The constant performance of humility is no longer required. You can speak your mind with a frankness that would have been unthinkable for your younger self. You watch your own daughter, who has inherited a portion of your famous beauty. You see the same cycle beginning again. You see the way men look at her. You see the compliments that are also tests. You see the burden of her own loveliness settling onto her young shoulders, and you feel a profound sense of pity, and a strange, guilty sense of relief that it is no longer you. You have survived. You have navigated the treacherous waters of being too pretty in a world that was terrified of it. You have endured the trials, both mythical and mundane, and your reward, in the end, is the simple, quiet peace of being overlooked. It's a bittersweet victory, a freedom found not in gaining power, but in gracefully letting it go. The sun of your beauty has set, and in the calm, cool twilight, you can finally, truly, be yourself. Your journey is nearing its end. You've traveled through myth and into the heart of the Athenian home. You've felt the heat of a god's desire and the cold chill of a husband's suspicion. Now, let's take one final walk up the sloping path that leads to the Acropolis, the sacred heart of Athens, to look upon the legacy of this complicated relationship with beauty, a legacy carved in stone. You leave the bustling city below, the path growing steeper, the air becomes clearer, thinner. This is a space meant to elevate you, to lift you from the messy reality of mortal life towards the realm of the divine. And as you round the final turn, you see them, the temples, the Parthenon, the Erechtheion, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. They are monuments to order, proportion, and a perfect, idealized beauty. This is the ultimate paradox. You are standing in a civilization that was, in many ways, obsessed with beauty. Their philosophers wrote about it. Their mathematicians tried to codify its proportions in the golden ratio, and their artists dedicated their lives to capturing it in bronze and stone. The art and architecture of this period would become the benchmark for beauty in the Western world for the next 2,000 years. You approach the Parthenon. Even in its own time, it was a marvel. The columns, which appear perfectly straight, are actually designed with a slight bulge in the middle, a technique called ent, as is too correct for the optical illusion that makes straight lines appear to curve inward. The architects, Akatinos and Kallikerades, under the supervision of the master sculptor Phidias, were geniuses of perception. They weren't just building a temple, they were sculpting an experience. They were creating a perfect, harmonious beauty for the human eye. You look up at the friezes, the long bands of sculpture that once wrapped around the temple. They depict gods, heroes, and the people of Athens in a great, flowing procession. Their faces are serene, noble, and inhumanly perfect. Their bodies are idealized, capturing the Greek ideal of a healthy, beautiful form. There is no fear here, no suspicion, no danger. This is beauty in its purest, most controlled, and safest form captured in marble. And then you see the statues of the goddesses. There is Athena Parthenos, the Virgin Athena, who once stood as a colossal, 40-foot-tall statue of gold and ivory inside the temple. There are the serene figures of Aphrodite, Hera, and Artemis, here in their stone effigies. Their beauty is something to be worshipped without fear. It is distant, divine, and poses no direct threat. You can admire the perfect curve of a stone cheek without worrying that the goddess will become jealous. This is the solution the Greeks found. They could celebrate and explore the ideal of beauty with wild abandon in their art, because art was a safe container for it. A statue of Aphrodite could be breathtakingly beautiful without being a political liability. A carved frieze could depict a handsome hero without him attracting the ire of a god. Art was the realm where beauty could be perfect without being dangerous. But you know the truth. You have lived it. You know the turbulent, messy, and often tragic human stories that swirled around the real-life counterparts of these serene figures. You look at a statue of a core, a maiden, with her enigmatic, gentle smile, what archaeologists call the archaic smile. You see her perfect braids, her graceful pose, and you remember the fear of the evil eye, the pressure to be humble, the terror of attracting the wrong kind of attention. This statue is not a portrait of a real girl. It is an ideal, an abstraction, scrubbed clean of all the anxieties that a real, beautiful girl would have faced. The debate among art historians over the meaning of these idealized forms is endless. Were they meant to be literal representations of the divine? Were they celebrations of human potential? Or were they a form of propaganda, meant to project an image of Athenian confidence and cultural superiority? The answer, as always, is likely all of the above. They are complex objects that served religious, political, and aesthetic functions all at once. As the sun sets, the marble of the temple seems to absorb the golden light, glowing with a soft, internal fire. You reach out and touch a column. It is cool and smooth, solid and eternal, and you finally understand. The Greeks didn't just celebrate beauty, they were terrified of it. They were so acutely aware of its power to disrupt, to create chaos, to invite divine wrath and human envy, that they had to tame it. They tamed it with stories, cautionary tales like those of Medusa and Helen, which served as warnings. They tamed it with social customs, like the seclusion of the Genii, among the performance of modesty, which sought to control its effects. And most enduringly, they tamed it with art. They took the wild, dangerous, living thing that was human beauty and they froze it in stone, turning it into a serene, perfect, and safely inanimate ideal. The beautiful, silent statues of the Acropolis are not just a celebration of beauty. They are a monument to the fear of it. They are the beautiful ghosts of a dangerous reality, the final, silent witnesses to the stories you have lived. You step away from the cool marble of the Parthenon, the silent ideals of the statues fading behind you. The journey isn't quite over. There are still depths of this beautiful danger to explore, not in the grand sweep of war, but in the quiet, lonely prison of a single mind. Let's return to Cassandra, not in the moment of her curse, but in the long, agonizing years that followed. Let's truly feel the weight of Apollo's vengeful gift. The curse has settled. The city of Troy is still standing, but its foundations are cracked with doom, and only you can see it. You exist in a state of double vision. With one set of eyes, you see the world as it is your mother Hecate, but weaving at her loom. The Trojan soldiers laughing as they polish their shields. The children playing with knuckle bones in the dusty streets. But with your other, cursed sight, you see the future superimposed over the present like a ghostly shroud. You see the loom burning, the shields shattered and bloody, the children's bodies lying still in those same streets. This is the true nature of your torment. It's not just knowing the future, it's being unable to reconcile it with the present. Every happy moment is poisoned by the knowledge of its horrific end. Every beloved face is already a skull beneath the skin. You try, again and again, to warn them. You're driven by a desperate, frantic love for your people. You interrupt the royal council. Your voice shrill with terror. "Aye, wooden horse will appear. It is a trick. Do not bring it inside the walls." The councilmen, your father's trusted advisors, look at you with that same soul-wearying expression. It's a mixture of pity, embarrassment, and impatience. They see their king's beautiful, high-strung daughter having another one of her fits. "Hush now, dear princess," one of them says, his voice placating, as if speaking to a frightened child. "The gods protect Troy. Go and make an offering. Calm yourself." They don't argue with your facts. They don't debate the logic of your warning. They dismiss you entirely. Your truth is not treated as information to be considered, but as a symptom of your madness. And your beauty, once a source of pride, now works against you. It makes you a more tragic, more poetic, but less credible figure. You are the mad prophetess, a romantic and pitiable character, not a serious strategic advisor. The isolation is absolute. You are more alone than Medusa on her desolate island, for Medusa's solitude was physical. Yours is psychological. You are surrounded by people, yet you are locked in a soundproof room of your own perception. You scream, but they only hear noise. You show them the fire, but they only see your wild, beautiful eyes. This experience of having your valid perception dismissed as hysteria has a name in our modern world. But here and now, it is simply your life. You begin to doubt your own mind. Are they right? Are these visions just the phantoms of a sickness? You look at your brother Hector, so strong and confident, so certain of Troy's victory, and for a moment you want to believe him. You try to force the terrible visions away, to see the world as they do, simple and full of hope. But the truth always rushes back in, a tide of fire and grief. There's a specific, lesser-known part of Cassandra's myth that is truly heartbreaking. In some versions, after being ignored time and time again, she takes an axe and smashes the sacred wooden statue of Athena in the temple, the Palladium, believing it is the source of the city's false hope. This act of frantic desecration seals her reputation as a mad, impious woman. It is the ultimate act of a desperate person trying to make others see the danger, even if it means destroying something sacred. Of course, it doesn't work. It only isolates her further. The line between Causinary's madness and her prophecy is a subject that classical scholars still explore. Was her frantic behavior a direct result of the curse, or was it the natural, human reaction of a sane person in an insane situation, the only one aware that everyone she loves is walking towards a cliff edge? The myth brilliantly blurs that line, leaving you to wonder if being the sole bearer of an awful truth is, in itself, a form of madness. When the wooden horse finally arrives, a gift from the seemingly departed Greeks, the city erupts in celebration. You run through the streets, tearing at your hair, weeping, pleading. Your warnings become shrieks. The Trojans, drunk on wine and relief, drag the horse into the city, laughing at your frantic display. That night, as the city sleeps, the soldiers emerge. The slaughter begins, and in the light of her burning city, Cassandra is finally proven right. But it is the most hollow, most agonizing victory imaginable. She is not vindicated. She is simply a survivor. In the graveyard she foretold, her curse is complete. She was given the power to see the truth, but was denied the power to do anything about it. The torture perfectly designed for a loving heart. The flames of Troy die down, but the echoes of its fall continue to define the landscape of fear. You've seen how beauty can be a liability on the grand stages of war and divine intrigue. Now, let's bring the focus back home to the quiet, day-to-day reality of your life as a married Athenian woman. We've touched on your husband's suspicion, but let's explore its deeper roots, the relentless trial of your virtue. In this society, a woman's virtue hers off rosy knee is not assumed. It is something that must be constantly performed and proven. And for you, a woman of exceptional beauty, the burden of proof is significantly higher. You are presumed to be a greater risk. So you must be demonstrably more virtuous than your plainer counterparts. Your entire life becomes a courtroom, and you are perpetually on the witness stand. Every action is scrutinized. Every word is weighed. You walk to the local fountain to fetch water with the other women of the neighborhood. This is one of the few socially acceptable public activities for a woman. It's a place of community, of gossip, of shared work. But for you, it's a minefield. You smile at a neighbor. Is your smile too friendly? Does it invite conversation? You laugh at a joke. Is your laugh too loud? Too unrestrained? Does it draw unwanted male attention from across the square? You learn to police your own expressions, to cultivate a demeanor of serene, unshakable modesty. Your public face becomes a carefully constructed mask of propriety. Back at home, the trial continues. Your husband has guests for a symposium. As the lady of the house, you are expected to make a brief, graceful appearance at the beginning of the meal, to oversee the servants and welcome the guests. Then, you are to retreat to the Genesee. But that brief appearance is fraught with peril. You must be the perfect hostess, warm but not familiar, graceful but not flirtatious, present but not prominent. You direct the servants with quiet efficiency. You ensure the guests are comfortable. But you must avoid engaging in lengthy or witty conversation. To be too clever, too charming, is to be seen as stepping outside your prescribed role. It could be interpreted as an attempt to captivate your husband's friends, a subtle act of infidelity. One of your husband's friends, a man known for his poetic flair, offers you an elaborate compliment, comparing your grace to that of a nymph. You can't just blush and accept it. You can't engage in playful banter. The correct response is to give a slight, modest nod, murmur a polite but brief thank you, and then seamlessly change the subject back to something neutral and domestic. Like the quality of the wine or the olive harvest, you must constantly deflect, downplay, and redirect. Your social life is a continuous act of conversational aikido, using the force of others' admiration to gently push it away. There's a fascinating, if depressing, insight from a legal speech written by the orator Liges. In it, a man who has killed his wife's lover defends his actions. He describes how his wife was, at first, the perfect spouse, modest, frugal, and an excellent household manager. But then, she was corrupted. How? By attending a funeral. At this public event, she was seen by the man who would become her lover. The speech presents her very act of being seen in public as the starting point of her downfall. It implies that a woman's virtue is so fragile that a single glance from the wrong man can be enough to shatter it. Whether this represents a common belief or simply a clever lawyer's argument is, of course, a point of academic debate, but it reveals a deep cultural anxiety about women's public visibility. For a beautiful woman, this anxiety was magnified tenfold. Your very presence outside the home was a potential breach of security. You live in a state of constant self-awareness, not out of vanity, but out of a need for self-preservation. You are your own harshest judge, your own most vigilant prison guard. You preemptively censor any behavior that could possibly be misinterpreted. The cage of the Genesee isn't just made of walls and doors. It's made of 1,000 tiny social rules that you have internalized. You have become complicit in your own confinement, because the alternative social ruin, shame, the loss of your home and family is unthinkable. This is the quiet, grinding tragedy of your situation. You are not being tried for anything you have done, but for what your beauty might cause others to do, or what it might tempt you to do. You are living a life sentence for a hypothetical crime. The peace you eventually find in old age is the peace of a prisoner finally paroled after a lifetime of good behavior. The trial of your virtue never truly ends, it just changes venues. As you navigate this complex world, you become acutely aware of the stories they tell about women like you. These aren't just myths about goddesses and princesses, they are archetypes, character molds that society uses to make sense of things it cannot control. You have been cast, against your will, in the role of the giant god Ye a womanly woman, whose power lies in her beauty and charm, a power that is inherently suspect. Let's explore how this archetype is constructed. Society needs a villain, a scapegoat, to explain away the disruptive force of male desire and the chaos it can create. It is far more comfortable to blame a woman's irresistible beauty than to confront the failures of male self-control. And so, the myth of the femme fatale, the dangerously alluring woman, is born and nurtured. You see it play out in the philosophical discussions of the men in your circle. They speak of two kinds of love, two kinds of Aphrodite. There is Aphrodite Urania, heavenly Aphrodite, who inspires a pure, intellectual love of beauty and truth. And then there is Aphrodite Pandemos, Aphrodite for all the people, the goddess of raw, physical desire and procreation. They elevate the former as a noble pursuit, while viewing the latter as a necessary but dangerous force that must be managed and contained within the confines of marriage. Your beauty, because it is physical and immediate, is automatically associated with Aphrodite Pandemos. You are a walking, talking reminder of the lower form of love that these high-minded men profess to disdain, even as they are drawn to it. You represent the body, not the mind, the chaos of nature, not the order of civilization. This is a way of intellectually framing you. By categorizing your power as something primal and non-rational, they can justify controlling it with the higher principles of law, reason, and social order, all of which are, conveniently, their domain. Consider the story of the first woman, Pandora. Again, Hesiod, the poet who tells her tale, calls her a Kaon, the beautiful evil. He describes her creation in detail. The gods give her the gifts of beauty, grace, and charm, but they also give her a bitch's mind and a deceptive character. She is a trap, a beautiful package designed to bring ruin to men. This isn't just one story, it's a foundational myth for the entire culture's understanding of gender. It establishes the archetype of woman as a beautiful but treacherous creature, whose allure is a weapon used against men. So when your husband looks at you with suspicion, he is not just seeing you, his wife. He is seeing millennia of cultural programming. He is seeing Pandora, and Helen, and Circe. He is seeing an archetype, a potential for betrayal that is built into your very nature. He is a victim of the same stories that you are. The extent to which this literary misogyny reflected real-life attitudes is one of the most contentious debates in classical studies. Some scholars argue that these texts, written by a small, educated male elite, represent a narrow, pessimistic view, and that the daily reality for most people was far more varied and nuanced. They point to evidence like loving epitaphs on tombstones and the powerful roles of priestesses in some cults as proof that not all women were seen as beautiful evils. Others argue that these foundational myths and philosophical ideas had a powerful, pervasive influence on the culture at all levels. The truth, as is often the case, is probably somewhere in the messy middle. But the existence of the archetype is undeniable, and its effect on you is profound. You feel like you are constantly fighting a ghost, wrestling with a reputation that precedes you. You know you are not deceitful. You know your heart is not treacherous, but how can you prove it when the master narrative of your entire culture insists that beauty like yours is a mask for danger? You realize that this archetype is the ultimate tool of social control. By creating and perpetuating the myth of the dangerous woman, the patriarchal society gives itself the perfect justification for limiting women's freedom. If women are inherently deceptive and their beauty is a weapon, then they must be supervised. They must be kept within the home. Their choices must be made for them by their more rational male guardians, fathers, husbands, brothers. The femme fatale is not a person, she is a political invention. She is the ghost that haunts every beautiful woman, the excuse that is used to lock her in a gilded cage. And as you sit in the quiet of your Guinea sea, you understand that the real monster isn't some divine being or a pirate on the high seas. The real monster is the story they tell about you. The years continue their silent, steady march. The silver in your hair is no longer a surprise, but a familiar part of your reflection in the polished bronze mirror. Your children are grown, with children of their own. You are a grandmother, a respected matriarch. The long, exhausting trial of your beauty is over, and in its place, a strange and profound peace has settled. This is the final chapter of your journey, fading into the safety of being unseen. The change was so gradual, you almost didn't notice it. It was a slow, gentle release. The feeling of being constantly watched has evaporated. The weight of 1,000 potential interpretations has lifted from your shoulders. You can now laugh as loudly as you please at the fountain, and no one thinks anything of it. It is the laughter of an old woman, not the dangerous allure of a young beauty. You find a new kind of power, one that is far more real and satisfying than the fleeting, troublesome power of your youthful appearance. It is the power of influence. Your sons, now important men in the city, come to you for advice. They do not ask about politics or war, but about family matters, about disputes with neighbors, about the character of a young woman they are considering for their own sons. They trust your judgment, your lifetime of experience in observing people. Your voice, once carefully moderated to avoid offense, now carries the weight of wisdom. Your daughters and daughters-in-law run their households based on the principles you taught them. You are the keeper of the family's traditions, the one who knows the right prayers to say during a storm, the secret to weaving the finest cloth. You are the anchor of the oikos. This is a real, tangible power, earned through decades of patient, careful work. It is a power that does not invite divine jealousy or mortal envy. It inspires respect. You think back to the women from the myths. What happened to them when they grew old? The stories rarely say. Helen, after the Trojan War, is returned to Sparta and grows old with Menelaus, her beauty becoming a legendary memory. But for most, their stories end with the climax of their beauty-induced tragedy. Medusa is slain by Perseus. Cassandra is murdered alongside Agamemnon. Psyche is made immortal, forever young. The myths are primarily interested in beauty when it is at its most potent and dangerous. They have little to say about its quiet, gentle decline. This absence in the myths is telling. It reinforces the idea that a woman's story is only worth telling when her beauty is a central plot point. The long, peaceful decades that might follow are an epilogue that no one bothers to write. But you are living that unwritten epilogue, and it is, in many ways, the best part of the story. You have freedom. You can walk through the city with a purpose and a confidence your younger self never knew. You are not a spectacle, you are a citizen. You are not a symbol, you are a person. There is a concept in some schools of Greek philosophy, particularly Stoicism, of living in accordance with nature. For the Stoics, this meant accepting the natural course of life and death, of youth and old age, with tranquility. You find yourself unintentionally practicing a form of this philosophy. You have accepted the natural fading of your looks, and in that acceptance, you have found a deep and abiding peace. The debate over the role and status of elderly women in Greek society is a complex one, with little definitive evidence. Some literary sources portray them as comic figures, often obsessed with wine, but funerary art and inscriptions often show them as revered figures, central to the family. Perhaps the most accurate view is that an old woman's status was directly tied to the success and respect of her family, particularly her sons. If her sons were powerful and dutiful, her old age would be one of security and honor. If they were not, it could be one of poverty and neglect. For you, in this final chapter, your life is a success. You have weathered the storm of your own beauty. You have survived the envy of gods and mortals. You have navigated the treacherous currents of politics and suspicion. You have raised a strong family. You have earned your peace. You sit in your courtyard, watching your granddaughter play. She has your eyes, a spark of the same beauty that defined your youth. You see the road that lies ahead of her, the challenges she will face. But you are not afraid for her, because you will be here to guide her. You will teach her the lessons you learned, the importance of humility, the art of deflection, the quiet strength of character. You will give her the tools to survive her own beauty. The journey that began with the fear and isolation of being too pretty has ended with the quiet confidence of a life well loved. You have faded from the spotlight, and in the comfortable, gentle shadows, you have finally, completely found yourself. The sun is low, casting a final, warm, honey-colored light across the city. From your peaceful courtyard, you can see the distant silhouette of the Acropolis, that monument of perfect, tamed beauty. Your long journey, both through this single day and through the landscape of a lifetime, is drawing to a close. It is time to gather the threads, to look back on the path you've traveled, and to understand the legacy of this dangerous gift you were given. You have stood in the agora and felt the chilling weight of 100 stares, a mix of awe and of fear you didn't yet understand. You learned that in this world, to be exceptional is to be a target, not just for the evil eye of mortal envy, but for the far more dangerous notice of the gods. Your very existence was a disruption to the cosmic and social order. You journeyed into myth and saw the raw, terrifying proof. You met Medusa, the devout priestess whose only crime was her beautiful hair. You witnessed her punishment at the hands of Athena, a chilling lesson in divine victim blaming, where the lure is punished more harshly than the aggressor. Her transformation into a monster was not just a curse, but a calculated destruction of her identity, turning her greatest asset into a weapon of involuntary horror. You met Psyche, the girl so beautiful she was worshipped, a passive blasphemy that earned her the spiteful wrath of Aphrodite. Her tale was a twisted fairy tale of impossible trials, teaching you that even a god's love is a perilous thing, and that to be placed on a pedestal is to be isolated from all true human connection. Her happy ending was earned through suffering that would have broken almost anyone. You stood on the walls of Troy with Cassandra, the tragic prophetess whose beauty attracted a god's desire, and, upon her refusal, a curse of exquisite cruelty. Her story was the ultimate psychological nightmare, to be granted perfect vision but to be condemned to never be believed, a special kind of hell for a soul who only wanted to save those she loved. Returning to the world of mortals, you saw how this fear of beauty was woven into the fabric of daily life. You learned to fear compliments and to master the art of humble deflection. You saw the charms and rituals people used to ward off the Baskania, a constant, low-level war against the perceived power of envy. You became a political chess piece, a walking dowry whose marriage could seal an alliance or spark a war. The story of Helen wasn't a romance. It was a geopolitical crisis, and her fate, the justification for a decade of slaughter. You felt the suffocating pressure within your own home, where your beauty made you a constant suspect in the court of your husband's mind, your virtue perpetually on trial. You were confined by the invisible walls of the Genesee, a gilded cage built of suspicion and societal expectation. You saw how society constructed the myth of the femme fatale, the Pandora, the source to justify this control, painting female beauty as an inherently dangerous, chaotic force that needed to be tamed by male reason and order. And finally, you found peace, a strained, bittersweet peace in the fading of the very thing that had caused you so much trouble. In old age, you faded from the spotlight into the safety of being overlooked, your value shifting from your appearance to your wisdom and character. You survived. Now as you look upon the serene marble faces of the statues on the distant hill, you see them for what they truly are. They are not a contradiction, they are the answer. They are the final act of taming. The Greeks, so obsessed with, unterrified by the volatile power of living beauty, found a way to have it without the danger. They froze it, they idealized it, they carved it in stone, scrubbing it clean of all its messy, human complexities. A marble statue cannot be unfaithful. It cannot attract a rival suitor and start a war. Its perfect face will not provoke the jealousy of a goddess. In stone, beauty is finally made safe. It is orderly, eternal, and, most importantly, it is silent. The legacy of dangerous beauty is this: a culture so profoundly ambivalent, so torn between adoration and terror, that its greatest artistic achievement is the creation of a perfect beauty that cannot breathe. The serene faces of the caryatids and the Theoi are the beautiful, silent ghosts of a very noisy and dangerous reality. They are the elegant solution to an intractable human problem, and their silence is the final word in a long and turbulent story. The light has faded completely now. The stars are beginning to appear in the deep violet sky over the ancient city. The journey is over. The whispers of the agora, the fury of the gods, the weight of the crown, it all melts away, leaving only the soft hum of the night. You are no longer on a dusty path in ancient Greece, no longer a character in a story. You are back in your own quiet room, warm and safe in your bed. The history, with all its sharp edges and its heavy lessons, recedes like the tide, leaving only smooth, sea-worn pebbles of thought on the shore of your mind. The stories of Medusa and Psyche and Helen are just that now, stories, echoes from a world so very long ago. Their anxieties are not your anxieties. Their fears are not your fears. They are just whispers on the gentle breeze that is carrying you now, softly, towards sleep. Let the cadence of the narrative dissolve. Feel the weight of your own body, the gentle rise and fall of your breath. The world of marble temples and jealous gods is a dream you are already leaving behind. Your own dreams are waiting. Softer, kinder places. Let go of the thread of the story and just float. The night is deep and peaceful, and it is here to hold you. There is nothing left to do now but rest. Nothing to do but to drift and to dream. The end of the article. Good night.